Good afternoon, Kavibal, and welcome to our GEC webinar series. For today's discussion, our topic would be on interdisciplinary perceptions of general education courses. Before we begin, take note of the following reminders. Make sure you are registered to the webinar to have your e-certificate of participation. Visit certificate.vibalgroup.com to generate your proof of attendance. Place your questions on the comment box allotted during the session and they will be addressed by our speaker later on. Share the video using hashtag LearnAs1PH as our official hashtag to our Vibal webinars. Experience learning, Kavibal. And now, to proceed with our session this afternoon, it is my pleasure to introduce to you our distinguished speaker. He earned a degree in Bachelor in Secondary Education, major in English and minor in Filipino from the University of Santo Tomas in 1995. He has joined the DECS or the DEX National Education Testing and Research Center Test Development Division for a year. The call of teaching was indeed strong that he answered it by being a faculty member of the University of Santo Tomas in 1996 up to the present. He has been the supervising teacher for Filipino, computer technology education, and English at the Education High School of UST. In 2004, just a day before his defense of his thesis for the degree, Master of Arts in Education, major in Language Education at the Jose Rizal University, the Faculty Union of the university has awarded him the Gawad Santo Tomas Best Instructor. This was coupled by a successful thesis defense in which he graduated with high distinction and the Best Thesis Award. Heeding the call of vertical alignment which the university promotes among the faculty members, he graduated with honors with the degree of Doctor of Philosophy, major in English at the Manuel L. Quezon University in 2007. He has also served the university as the Assistant Director of the Office for Faculty Evaluation and Development. He likewise served as the lead mentor of the Philippine Business for Education, UST STEP, UP Certificate Teacher Certificate Program. He is a member of the core group of speakers and facilitators of the Center for Innovative Teaching and Educational Delivery or the CITED of UST. He is currently the chair of the Department of Secondary Education of the College of Education of the University of Santo Tomas. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our speaker for this afternoon, Dr. Andres Julio Santiago Jr.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kia, for the kind introduction. Um, Once again, ladies and gentlemen, to the audience watching this webinar, good afternoon. I hope you are in the pink of health and you are, of course, safe in where you are watching this particular webinar. The topic that was given to me today is quite close to my heart as program chair of the secondary education program of the University of Santo Tomas College of Education. We're going to be talking about the CHED-CMO 20, about the general education curriculum. So let me just share my um, slide with you. So the title of my discussion this afternoon is Interdisciplinary Perceptions of General Education Curriculum, aligning with CHED-CMO Series 2013. I do have here my email address, so if in the event there would be some other questions you would want to pursue after the presentation, perhaps we could exchange emails. May I just have first a disclaimer before I started my presentation that all references cited and images used actually belong to their rightful owners. That's the reason why you could see that at the bottom of your screen, I get to have there already the link to all of these images. Growing up as a college student in the 90s, This is one show that I believe that my contemporaries would usually devote their afternoons to, and that's music television or MTV. And at one particular time, there was one episode wherein the topic was about the next generation of professionals, in which case, the statement uh, was given that the next generation of professionals will have 7 career shifts. Just imagine, ladies and gentlemen, our own parents, our grandparents, those who have gone before us would just have one and the same career. From the start, after graduating from college, until the time that they would retire, they would have one and the same professions. But MTV already saw it coming as early as mid 90s that the would-be professionals, and we're talking about millennials and possibly the students that we now have, the edgers, who would eventually have 7 career shifts. My outline of sharing this afternoon would be only on 3 particular points. A quick look at the CHED-CMO Series 20, CHED-CMO 20, Series of 2013, the curriculum alignment and mapping to tertiary degree programs, and of course, the confluence of disciplines. So indeed, in the classroom, there's a particular law. A quick look at the CHED-CMO 20 Series of 2013. So part of this one, if you are an administrator, if you are a program chair, more likely you have seen this document. This is actually the rationale for the change. And that CMO would actually highlight two. One is that of college readiness, and of course that of the K to 12 basic education curriculum. We know for a fact that in the K to 12, especially in the grades 11 and 12, most of the general education curriculum that we used to teach in the tertiary level are actually already placed in grades 11 and 12. That's the reason why there are, of course, different strands for senior high school. Another part of this one is, of course, that of our Constitution, Article 14, Section 1 and Section 2. Establish and maintain and support a complete, adequate, and integrated system of education relevant to the needs of people and society. And of course, exercise reasonable supervision and regulation of all educational institutions. And of course, with the Higher Education Act of 1994 that established the uh, Commission on Higher Education, which actually sets the minimum standards for programs and institutions of higher learning. Okay? Furthermore, the college readiness standards has already been integrated to the GE courses in higher education programs in the senior high school core courses, creating now a window for the revision of the current GE curriculum um, that we are now having, of course, in the 2017 series of our degree programs. Currently, the series year of the tertiary level programs that we are now implementing are series 2017. Most of them would be series 2017. Okay? So this is also part of the rationale that there were, of course, public consultations with stakeholders and other interested parties before, of course, the rollout of this CHED CMO 20. Okay. So again, it provides a framework and rationale of the revised GE or General Education program or courses as a paradigm shift and in context of the K-12 curriculum. Because of course, we would have to step up now the competencies now that these general education courses that we used to teach for a tertiary education are now with the senior high school strands. Part of the framework also of CHED CMO 20 would be, of course, related to this one, would be the 4 pillars of education. And I'm pretty sure you have heard and you have listened to so many seminars and workshops related to this one, that of learning to live together, learning to be, learning to do, and learning to learn. and even, of course, the framework for 21st century learning that highlights these three areas: life and career skills, learning and innovation skills, which focuses, of course, on the four C's: critical thinking, communication, and collaboration and creativity. And, of course, that of information, media, and technology skills. All that would be encompassed within the core subjects, that of the three R's in the 21st century themes. So under this one, you have standards and assessment, curriculum and instruction, professional development, and learning environment. Okay. Another framework that we could look into, um, attuned to CHEDCMO 20 of 2013, would be the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So you have these 17 goals that each and every nation is supposed to address, from zero poverty or no poverty down to partnership for the goals. I'd like to also cite at this point of the discussion that we have to establish also that strong identity and sense of belongingness to the ASEAN. We are a member nation in the ASEAN, and all the more that it's incumbent upon us to actually promote and defend the following principles: that of respect for independence, sovereignty, and territorial integrity, down to freedom from external interference, subversion, and coercion. On the other side, you have the respect for fundamental freedoms, protect and promote human rights, and promote social justice, down, of course, to the adherence to rules towards integration and market-driven economy. I'm pretty sure, dear colleagues, the audience watching this webinar, you have seen this slide before. That's the reason why I'm simply highlighting this one, because this one really is very important in establishing our identity, not only as a Filipino, but also as a member of the ASEAN member nations. And if you can still remember, it was our former president, Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, who actually signed our participation in the ASEAN integration. If you remember ASEAN integration 2015, this also was a move so that we shift, of course, to the usual 10-year basic education to the 12 years K to 12 basic education, that we're supposed to be at par with our neighbors in the ASEAN. Another framework that we could look into, if from the ASEAN context, is this one. It's called the ASEAN Qualifications Reference Framework, wherein there are um, 6 indicated areas that we're supposed to develop. One would be support and recognition qualifications, up to, of course, promoting higher quality qualification systems. So this would actually establish the same set of standards and professional attributes that we may actually have for every ASEAN professional, meaning wherever they are, they would actually have the same preparation from their college degree program. They would have more likely the same certification or examination to obtain, of course, their licenses. And even, of course, how they would be practicing their profession, and even to the part of compensation or the salary that they would actually get. So this actually sets standards for every ASEAN professional. May he be working in his own country, or should he, uh, let's say, choose to move to another country, or the company perhaps who hired him would actually have that his workplace is yet in another country. So how does that now articulate in the context of the Philippines? So we actually have the Philippine qualifications framework. So for the Philippine qualifications framework, this is our response now to the AQRF. And there is a progression chart. If you would notice, dear colleagues, from the lower left hand over here, from the end of grade 10, that is equivalent to that of TESDA's National Certificate number 1. At the end of grade 12, it is actually equivalent to a NC2 or National Certificate number 2. If the student was able to uh, graduate from a baccalaureate degree or a college degree, that's already on level 6. And if the student was able to articulate this one, his area of specialization, up to the doctoral or postdoctoral degree, then that is already at level 8. So how do these two match? I mean, the AQRF and the Philippine Qualifications Framework, or the PQF. So in this table, you get to find a one-to-one correspondence of the attributes of both the PQF and the AQRF. That is how our CHED, our government, has actually seen that there is really a need for us to articulate a perfect matching with our ASEAN counterparts with the introduction of the PQF, or Philippine Qualifications Framework. So how does this one now, how does the PQF articulate to a particular degree program or a line of specialization or a degree in tertiary education? So let me cite as an example that of the teacher education programs. So for the teacher education programs, there is of course what we may call the PPST, the Philippine Professional Standards for Teachers. And in the PPST, you get to have 4 career stages. From the time that the student has entered the teacher education institution, that's at the beginning stage already, until the time that the student would actually graduate after 4 years, until such time that the student has already obtained the necessary license. That's of course by passing the BLEP, and he now moves to the practice of his profession, in the in service now, and more likely this would be within 2 to 3 years that he now becomes a proficient teacher, until such time that he has already, let's say, achieved having the higher degree, which could be a master's degree, and he has, let's say, spent around 6 to 7 years. But remember, the number of years is not the sole uh, determining factor if the teacher becomes a highly proficient teacher. Again, let me reiterate that the number of years in the teaching profession does not necessarily equate to the degree of proficiency of the teacher. You may have been there, again, of no offense to anyone, you may have been there in the teaching profession for the longest time, 20, 25 years. But that is not a guarantee that you are a highly proficient teacher. It might be that the skill would be proficient or worst at the beginning level. And of course, we have the last career stage, which is the distinguished, which is the career stage 4, wherein the teachers at this level embody the highest standards of teaching, grounded by global best practice, and lead colleagues in promoting quality teaching and learning. So we could say that these are in the public school, the master teachers already, who go from different schools and train their fellow teachers. These are the ones who are already having, let's say, the trailblazing mark in the field of education in terms of their innovations, in terms of their research, in terms, of course, of their best practices that they share with their fellow teachers. The way I look at it, there are also certain drivers that the CHED CMO 20 can actually make use of. So in international setting, we have, of course, the 21st century learning, that of the 7 C's, that of collaboration, care for self, care for others, curiosity, cultural understanding, communication, creativity, and critical thinking. You have the 3 R's: risk-taking, reflectiveness, and resilience. And you have there the 3 M's: that the learning material is actually tailor fitted, made for everyone, that the learning material should be meaningful and it should be motivating. If you would notice, dear colleagues, what do I have here in the uh, photo are actually gears, because the movement of one of these gears would actually have a ripple effect on 21st century learning. These are all composite parts of what makes 21st century learning something that is worth, of course, our time and of course our practice. Another way of looking at it and another graphical representation is through this one. I'd also like to promote in my sharing for you with you this afternoon the curriculum for future minds. Of course, we are still bound to teach and develop both the content and competencies that go with it, as of course dictated by the CMOs of our degree programs. Of course, those are the hard skills. But at the very core of it would be the soft skills, or shall we say the essential skills, or the life skills. Okay? That of design thinking, visual literacy, mate selection, emotional intelligence, especially now, financial management also, system-centered thinking. This is relatively connected to our new generation of learners, both millennials and edgers, gaming for a purpose. That's the reason why if you notice the introductory video a while ago of Vibal, and I commend them for that one, of having an LMS that has a gamified feature, because that is now something that would really promote what our students are really engaged into as far as learning is concerned. If the learning content is interesting because it is gamified, all the more that you get to have engagement. Always remember the cardinal rule, dear colleagues. The more senses used, the better the learning. And that is, of course, the law of sense dependence. And of course, we have the generational echoes, in which case we learn, of course, from the stories and the lessons that are given to us by our forefathers, our parents. Okay? Understanding consciousness. That's the reason why one of the core courses under CHED CMO 20 is understanding the self. Constructive dialogue. That's the reason why in CHED CMO 20 you actually have purposive communication. Okay? Interdependence, raising children, and of course that of critical thinking. Dr. Howard Gardner, if you remember him from the multiple intelligences theory together with his colleagues at the Harvard School of Psychology, actually had something right after, of course, the multiple intelligences theory, and that is, of course, the five minds of the future or for the future. And among these five disciplines, synthesizing, creating, respectful, and ethical mind, it's actually the synthesizing mind which would encompass the other four. Okay? For this, I am actually telling you that we're supposed to come up with a curriculum, not just for our degree programs, but also the one for the general education curriculum embedded within our program, something which is future compliant or future ready, okay, for our students. Remember that we are developing would-be professionals for the future. Though on our part, we may not really have seen it as early as now, what would the jobs be in the future? So the best that we could do is actually look into the possibility of developing these five minds for the future so that they are future compliant and future ready. um, Mr. Carrington, Alan Carrington, came up with the pedagogy wheel. What you see on your screen is version 5 already. I've been teaching in the teacher education department for the longest time in the university, around 20 years or so. And I've been telling my students that if only as a college student, I was given even just a fraction of these applications or technologies that could perhaps complement my going to the library, then I, together perhaps with my contemporary students during those times, could have ended up all as cum laudes. Just imagine the number of tools that you have here. I'd always go by the principle, to whom much is given, much is expected. That's the reason I always challenge my students that given this opportunity that you have this much tools with you, isn't that incumbent upon you now to make the most out of the learning experience every time you enter a classroom? May it be on face-to-face basis or now on a virtual mode. So again, on this one, really, there's more than meets the apps. It's not the apps over here. The apps would just be platforms. But what is most important, dear colleagues, is what we develop among our students as competencies or skills using these apps as platforms or forms. Okay? So again, you would notice that in the diagram also, it moves from the level of understanding, which is the basic, down to up to the level, rather, up to the level of creation, which is the highest level. But I'd like to believe also that creation now may not actually be the highest level of the competencies. Okay? It could be that of the letter S, which is actually sharing. Okay? Later on, I'll discuss more of the concept of sharing and why is it more likely a higher skill than just creation. Looking back at my class in UST, I had this course, educational technology, and I'd like to have a shout out to my teacher during the time, Dr. Fontanilla, and she introduced our class to Marshall McLuhan. Of course, the book of Marshall McLuhan, Understanding Media, is so 1970s, but these two nuggets of wisdom that were shared to us by Dr. Fontanilla really created a great impact to the practice of my teaching profession. And one of these would be the medium is the message. How we now conduct our teaching and learning. In this case, it's going to be on virtual or online or distance or augmented. Okay? It's actually the message that this generation is telling and defining itself with. Furthermore, McLuhan tells us that we shape our tools and then our tools shape us. Just a quick question, dear viewers. Can you just imagine yourself without, of course, your smartphone? If you would notice, your smartphone has taken already the function of other gadgetry that you used to have. One of them is your watch. Another could be a calendar. Okay? And now it's quite unimaginable that we don't have with us our devices, our tools. The smartphone is, of course, just one of them. Okay? So moving now to the next one, which is curriculum alignment and mapping to tertiary level programs. So just remember from the CHED-CMO 20, article number 1, the curriculum overview. Again, there are two areas here that they would want to develop. One is intellectual competencies such as critical, analytical, and creative thinking and multiple forms of expression. And number two, civic capacities demanded of membership in the community, country, and the world. If you would notice, the first bullet alone would already target higher order thinking skills. Of course, it's obvious because it's in the tertiary level. Number two is civic capacities. Not because that the student has graduated from the program and takes on the career, That's it. There is, of course, a social responsibility that that professional should and must carry with him, not just for himself, but also to the community to which he is a member of, to the country, and of course, that of the world. So he's a citizen not only of the country, he is not only a member of his own community, but also that of the world. Okay? So there are also goals for general education, for values reflective of humanist orientation, analytical and problem solving skills, ability to think through an ethical and social implications, competency to learn continuously throughout life. So if you would notice, number four over here is that of lifelong learning, learning how to learn. I'm mentioning this one because could you just imagine, dear colleagues, the half-life of the competencies or the skills that we are developing among our students? For all we know, the half-life of technology skills could just be within 1 year. Of no offense to anyone. To those who are taking information technology, this is the reason why after graduation, they would have to update themselves with the technological innovations and advances because if not, they would be left behind. This is also the same reason why the different professional groups, okay, would actually sponsor seminar workshops so as to update their members of the different innovations or trends within the practice of their professions. And this is also the same reason why PRC requires us, of course, that when we renew our licenses, that we have to show proof of our CPD points through, of course, the seminars, workshops, and trainings that we have undergone. Okay, so next one is that of course there are overlapping realms. We cannot really discount this fact that there will really be overlapping realms. One individual where the student is enabled to develop his or her ability as a person, conscious of his talents, rights, and responsibilities, not only towards herself but also towards others. Philippine society and the nation, where the individual is aware and proud of this collective identity. It's the reason why, dear colleagues, I am really promoting not just the Filipino identity that has to be woven through our curriculum, but also that of the ASEAN identity. And of course, that of the global community where the Filipino student recognizes and respects the fundamental humanity of all, respects and appreciates diversity, and cares about the problems that affect the world. So in sum, knowing the self, Filipino society and the world and the environment and how these intersect are great goals for general education. So you would notice Ched has put it and framed it perfectly that the general education curriculum is actually holistic by nature. Down to the specifics, you have now the different general education outcomes. So in terms of intellectual competencies, these are the three that CHED CMO 20 would want to target. Okay? So from higher levels of comprehension down to understanding of basic concepts across domains of knowledge. Second, that of the personal and civic competencies. Um, oh, sorry, this is still part of the intellectual competencies, critical, analytic, and creative thinking, application of different analytical modes. In personal and civic responsibilities, you have these from appreciation of the human condition down to the ability to contribute personally and meaningfully to the country's development. To this one, let me already inject, of course, the concept of universal sympathy. Universal sympathy is a term that has been coined by the Italian writer Octavio Paz, writing in the realm or in the theme of, or genre rather, of magical realism. It talks about universal sympathy. What is universal sympathy? Universal sympathy simply is being humane to just about any human being. It even articulates, of course, in the good book, that of the Good Samaritan, an altruist kind of person, altruistic kind of person. For practical skills, we have working effectively in a group, down, of course, to basic work-related skills and knowledge. I'm pretty sure, dear colleagues, that in your VMGO, vision, mission, goals, and objectives of your respective institutions, you actually have articulated the concept of working effectively in a group. Or how is it that our would-be graduates would have that attribute that would make them collaborative to one another, whatever the profession that they are actually interacting with. Sections 3, revised core courses. Just to have a quick review of this one. Remember, if you are mapping your curriculum, just remember program chairs. Just remember deans. That of course we have 24 units of courses under the GEC, 9 units of elective courses, and of course 3 units of life and works of Rizal or the libraries, which is actually mandated by law. Highlighted here is that the GE courses may be taught in English or Filipino. The 8 core courses would actually have their own distinct descriptions. But let me also highlight here the one in red. Consistency is a must, dear colleagues. You have to make sure that if you have chosen one um, medium of instruction to use, let's say for example, it's Filipino, dapat sa lahat ng mga pangunahing kurso sa kolehiyo or the general education courses, lahat dapat ng mga pangunahing kurso sa kolehiyo ay dapat gamit ang wikang Filipino. It cannot be, dear colleagues, that one particular GE core course simply because there is one among our faculty members who claim to be the only person who teaches that GE course in the Filipino language totally disregards the medium of instruction that is actually indicated in the program specifications that our college or your college have submitted to CHED. You see, the program chairs know this one very well, the deans know this one very well. When the program specifications for that degree program which you are now heading or you are having in your college was submitted to the CHED, with of course the approval of your academic affairs, it actually articulated there what is the course. Is it spelled out or framed in Filipino using Filipino as the medium of instruction, or is it in English? In no way should we allow inconsistency among the GE courses. Okay? So, again, I invite you to check out this link over here. CHED already has the prototype syllabi for the 8 core courses. May it be that you teach in Filipino or you teach them, of course, teach them in Filipino or teach them in English. But of course, as a tertiary level institution, though the fact remains that we comply to what a prototype syllabus could have or tell us, we're supposed to fortify it with our own distinct way of delivering education, the mark of the VMGO of your academic institution. Let's now move on to the general education elective. So a total of 9 units to the elective courses which must qualify as GE subjects where it must take note of the following guidelines. Conform to the philosophy and goals of the GE stated in the document, which is the CMO 20. Apply an inter or cross-disciplinary perspective, which is actually part of the topic for today's discussion. And of course, draw materials, cases, or examples from Philippine realities and experiences, and not just from those of other countries. So you see how CHED has perfectly framed it. It has to be that our GE courses are contextualized in the Philippine setting. In the provinces, for example, there are, of course, certain peculiar contexts that you could actually highlight how a concept could be articulated or is articulated in the context of the culture of your province. So in addition, electives must cover at least in any two domains of knowledge. Let's say, for example, arts and humanities, social sciences and philosophy, science and technology and mathematics. So it has to be a mix of two. So if you chose one for arts and humanities, the other one has to be, let's say, for example, from science and technology. It cannot be that these belong to the same domains. Okay? So although GE electives are categorized by knowledge domain primarily to ensure a balanced and well-rounded course design, the content and perspectives of the GE courses traverse disciplinary borders. So again, you have to check what are the other degree programs offered by your college. That's the reason why you have more likely the same offerings of electives across the degree programs within your college. Meaning, for example, I belong to the Faculty of Arts and Letters of the university. So there are around 10 or 12 programs in my faculty. So it could be that a student who came from communication arts could take the elective from yet another program, knowing it's actually within the same domain or field of specialization. Okay. But if it's in the arts and humanities that they had one option for the elective, the other one should come, let's say, for example, from science, technology, and mathematics. Okay? My suggestion is that as program chairs and of course deans, prudently plan a best fit pair of electives to your program intended learning outcomes or your program outcomes or your PILOS. They have to check which one can really match with my PILOS. Um, in my case, in the teacher education department, it's actually a mix of arts and humanities and that of social sciences and philosophies. When we were crafting the program specifications, we actually chose from these two domains. One option for arts and humanities, the other one would be in social sciences. So let us now move on to the different possible courses that you could offer in each strand or in each domain, shall I say. So of course, under math, science, and technology, you have environmental science, people and Earth's ecosystem, human reproduction, living in the IT era. For social philosophy, you have religions, religious experiences, and spirituality, Philippine indigenous communities, gender and society, and of course that of the entrepreneurial mind. Let me just highlight here that a lot of colleges and academic units or universities actually would highlight the choice of entrepreneurial mind. Why? It is simply because that is for uh, the tendency or the characteristic now of our students. They are highly entrepreneurial by nature. I'll just give you one example. We have been talking about gamifying things. You see, the Gen Z right now who are hooked on the computer, let's say they are playing, let's say a multiplayer game or how do you call this one, an online game, they could actually create an avatar after, of course, achieving the different levels. And for all you know, they could actually sell the avatar to someone else. Of course, if the price is right. And this is one thing that they got from the Gen Xers. If you're a Gen Xer and you're watching this one, I'm pretty sure you'll do a thumbs up. As a Gen Xer myself, there is one thing that Gen Xers actually sold during our elementary years. And our kids got this one from us. Our kids are actually the Gen Z. And they do have, of course, that of the entrepreneurial mind. Okay? Arts and humanities, great books, Philippine popular culture, indigenous creative crafts, especially if there is one within your locality or your province. Let's say, for example, you're coming from Bulacan, a big shout out from people coming from Bulacan. So if there is one creative craft, indigenous creative craft that you may have in your locality, then you may want to choose that one. If you're coming from Laguna, for example, the concept of paglililok or the art of paglililok, you may want to highlight that one as part of your indigenous creative crafts. And of course, that of reading visual art. Okay? On to the third topic right now with around 15 minutes to go, just in time. We're talking here in our topic of confluence of disciplines, dear colleagues. Our students are not only sharpening their competencies or their skills, preparing themselves for the challenges of the future career, but it's also learning together with others. Remember, that is one of the pillars of education. Okay? Learning to live with others. And to this one, the term that I would be using is confluence. Confluence, of course, is when two streams of two different rivers would actually be at a junction, or they would connect. So that is confluence. But what we're seeing here in this context is not just of two different streams of specializations. It could be multiple disciplines. So hence confluence of disciplines. So what do I mean by confluence of disciplines? Confluence of discipline may actually be articulated as follows. One is that of developing multifaceted human beings. When I say developing multifaceted human beings, that we are developing work-ready and compliant professionals. That's the reason why I would understand why is it that the degree programs who have a board examination would have it that their assessments, especially that of long test and major examinations, are really multiple choice formatted like that of a board examination. You have to understand that they have to, of course, develop test taking skills. This has been mentioned a while ago in the introduction. Part of the early phase of my career, I worked in the DepEd NETRC TDD. That's the Test Development Division. And one thing that we have found out in that office is that test taking skills is actually key in passing any national examination. So how is it that we have prepared our students to, of course, be compliant professionals through, of course, the test taking skills? We're forming universal human beings. We're trying to, of course, balance compartmentalization. We're trying to create a team of experts. We're trying to nurture growth of the next generation of nation builders and stewards. In particular, in terms of developing multifaceted human beings, our Gen Z right now are highly competent and multi-skilled. They are the ones who have the so-called multi-slashy personality. What do I mean by multi-slashy personality? Yes, they took a college degree program. Yes, that's the college degree program to which you are actually a chair of. But it doesn't mean that if they are taking, for example, teacher education, that they would only focus on teacher education. For all you know, they're dipping their fingers into amateur photography. They could be a musician. They could be, let's say, for example, an amateur cook. And they do have a continuous growth of other add-ons to their personality. So you cannot really put them in a context wherein it's only their line of specialization. They have other personalities that they're also developing. Okay? They are always mobile or on the go. They are citizens of the world, and they are both active in real and virtual worlds. Not to discount the fact that they also have different personalities in the virtual world. If you remember millennials, a big shout out to you. When you were in Friendster, you had multiple accounts. You also had multiple emails, and these are proofs that you have multiple personalities in the virtual world, forming the universal human beings. So our students right now, the Gen Z right now, are with holistic personalities. They try to develop each and every part of their personality, may it be cognitive, affective, and of course that of psychomotor. They are good communicators and collaborators, and this is the reason why they are really so active in social media. Okay, and they have this high level of universal sympathy. Um, Again, if something happens in another country, they are quick to react to it, either by supporting it or perhaps debunking it. Okay? And of course, they are always for helping out other people, regardless of race, culture, creed, or philosophies in life. They have strong and determined advocacies. And this is also the same reason why you see them going out in the streets, or if not, you see them online, and they are actually promoting strongly their advocacies in life. And they are defenders of truth and justice. And this also articulates the fact that they are developing themselves as servant leaders. I'd like to focus also on this one, balancing compartmentalization. Though the fact remains, dear colleagues, that in our degree programs, there really is a line of specialization, which is, of course, part of compartmentalization. There's a term called vertical articulation. When a student graduates from a bachelor's degree, more likely he would articulate this one in the master's degree within the same degree program. If I took, for example, Bachelor of Secondary Education major in English, then I would have to take Master of Education for language education, or MA English or MA Literature. If I have to take my PhD, then I would have to make sure I would finish PhD in English. So that is, of course, compartmentalization. But what we're saying in the Shed CMO 20 is that we try to balance compartmentalization. That though it's always sets a bar higher in the field of expertise for a student, and that is relatively true. Uh, I've been telling my students in the teacher education department that they do have a timeline in terms of how they articulate their degrees. So 4 years in college, let's say for example, 3 years for the master's degree, and let's say for example, 4 years for your PhD. So usually our students right now, I think, would graduate at the age of around 22 or 23. So adding 3 and 4, so by the time that they are 30, they are already uh, degree holders onto the PhD level. Yes, our students may be highly specialized through the different degree programs that they took, but they know a bit of all other things as well. Remember, this is not the tendency of the Gen Z. Though they specialize on something, it's through the GE courses that they get to know a bit of all other things. That's the reason why you're supposed to choose a prudent mix or a match of GE courses coming from two different domains, as aligned, of course, to your PILOS or your program outcomes. It actually maintains a healthy work-life balance. So even if they're practicing professionals, they could be doing something else after their office hours, okay? Which may not actually be within their line of specialization or profession. And of course, our students right now actually appreciate others' lenses. So they might be in the engineering program, but for all you know, they are not really having too many friends from the engineering program, but from the other programs. And I really would um, recommend that our students mix with other students from the other degree programs, because that is maintaining a different lens or different perspective other than their own perspective. So it becomes now holistic. And of course, these generation of students are all team players who are always willing to help and share. They're just a tweet away, they're just a text away. Okay? And another one that I'd like to highlight, the articulation of the GE courses and how this one gets to be interdisciplinary, is that through the GE courses, we're trying now, or we're creating now a team of experts who know their place in their class picture. What do I mean by that one? They know that they are newcomers in the workforce, for example, about to learn the ropes from the millennials who are their immediate superiors, or perhaps the Gen Xers who could be the CEO, or perhaps the baby boomers who could actually be a member of the board of trustees. They know their place in a class picture. They will not, of course, impress their presence, but they know how is it to conduct themselves prudently wherever they are. They bring in their specialization in solving a problem. And remember, this is the reason why, again, of no offense to my generation, that of the Gen Xers, this is the reason why sometimes we look them with a different eye. Why? Because things that would take us so many hours to take or to finish would just be a snap of a finger for them, would just be chicken feed. I'll give you one example as a proof. Google Sheets, Google Docs, the Drive, of course the cloud. Okay? They don't bring in their files with them, not like on a USB, not on a hard drive, but it's all there in the cloud. And it could just be within their reach, within their access, for as long as there is, of course, internet access. They're respectful and ethical with other professionals. They're always willing to learn and always ready to teach. Again, two things: always willing to learn and always ready to teach. And of course, most importantly, they connect with all generations easily. I think that is one uh, defining characteristic with this Gen Z students right now. It's very easy for them to connect with any generation. May you be a millennial to which they're having close affinity with, or perhaps Gen Xers like me, or perhaps baby boomers like their lolo and their lolas. And of course, the last one in my slide with 5 minutes to go is this one: nurturing the growth and of the next generation of nation builders and stewards of the world. I'd like to believe that the GE core courses, together with the electives in CHED-CMO 20, would actually enable our students to fully internalize their respective ikigai. Ikigai is a Japanese concept transliterated as the reason for being, having to answer four questions. Okay, what is it that you love? What is it that you're good at? What are the skills that you can do? And what would be those things that you could be paid for? If you could answer all of these four questions positively, then you already know your purpose for being. That's your ikigai. That your sense of morningness, dear colleagues, would just be that of making that day perfect. Like a Japanese samurai would always do. As soon as he wakes up in the morning, the only thing that he has at the back of his mind is how is it that I would be able to perfectly live this day that has been given to me by God as a blessing, in articulation of my ikigai, my reason for being. They are fully cognizant, of course, of the Greek concepts ethos, pathos, and logos, that of ethical considerations and treatment with one another, pathos or emotions, especially now in this situation of the pandemic, that everyone needs to have emotional support. And I'd like to say it's a strong emotional support that we're supposed to give one another. And of course, that of logic, how to quickly and prudently think at this particular perilous times. Highly creative, innovative. And remember, I'd like to, of course, highlight here one idea that I also learned from our current Dean Pilar Romero, that there is no box. That our students would have to be given that idea to be highly creative and innovative. There is no box in the first place. That would actually give them now the opportunity to unleash their creativity. And remember, the man of the last century in the Time magazine, um, Albert Einstein, would tell us that imagination is far more important than knowledge. You could ask SpongeBob and Patrick perhaps for that one. And of course, number four, they're high in naturalistic and existential intelligences. That's the reason why they're always connected and grounded, of course, with Mother Nature. And how is it to protect Mother Nature? And of course, their connection with, of course, their creator. Okay? And of course, the last one is that they are highly altruistic. They're always selfless, and they have this kind of selflessness as they exercise, of course, they're helping other people, and of course, making sure that they focus on helping out those who are actually in need. Again, this is the concept of universal sympathy that was mentioned by Octavio Paz. So to this one, I end my short sharing with you this afternoon, and I hope and pray that at least I have given you insights that you may want to have as part of your reflective practice as you prepare for the new school year, as you of course check the alignment of your GE courses offering in your various degree programs. Again, if ever there would be some questions that you may actually have um, that I cannot answer through this webinar, my email is here. You can contact me, and definitely I'll be more than happy to connect with you. Thank you very much, your colleagues.
Thank you very much, Doc June, for that very insightful session you had with us this afternoon. So we now proceed to our question and answer part, Doc. Okay po. So for
Sure,
our
sure.
first question, this is from Mr. Henry de la Peña. Sir, in your own opinion po, should we focus on localization of education or on internationalization of education?
Thank you very much, sir, for that question. Actually, that question is very important because, for one, we are a signatory to the ASEAN Integration 2015, and we also have to recognize the fact that we are Filipinos. So I think the answer to that one is globalization, or shall we say, thinking globally but acting locally. So I think it's a balance between these two. I think we have to temper and strike a balance between two things. We really cannot just be within our own localities, looking only on that limited perspective. But we have to also set our eyes to what is actually going on in the global context. And that's the reason why the different student exchange programs or faculty exchange programs, immersions, for example, are actually given as opportunities for us to be able to see other contexts other than that of our own. So I think, sir, it really has to be a balance between these two. I suggest that you may want to have some initiatives within your academic institutions that would actually promote one localization of, let's say, the knowledge and culture within your locality, and another initiative perhaps of your college or academic unit that would focus on internationalization. When I say initiatives, all the projects would actually be within the two areas. So what projects, what activities would you have in your school that would promote local knowledge, local culture, maintaining the identity of your locality and your people, especially within, of course, the provinces or the different um, indigenous groups that we have in the country. And of course, the other one is that of projects within the international realm. We really can't help it but connect, of course, with our international partners. Um, of course, the closest could be that to ASEAN. Thank you.
Okay po, thank you so much po, Doc. Then for our next question, this is from Miss Jane Solomon. Good PM
Yes.
po, sir. Is interdisciplinary approach applicable to those homeschooled learners?
Yes, I think the interdisciplinary approach can also be used with homeschooled learners. For one, it is universal in context. We cannot really say that if a student came from a homeschooling um, system, for example, we cannot say that the perspective would be limited simply because he was homeschooled. All the more that we're supposed to expose him to, of course, the realities of the outside. I mean, outside the homeschooling context. So I think the best way to do that is when we connect, of course, with faculty members or administrators from other programs, so as to enrich the exposure. You'll never know if you can strike, for example, a an activity wherein you will be bringing together students from different degree programs and they interact or they come up with one particular project or program. For all you know, that would actually develop in them a new lens or new perspectives other than their own, especially if they were into homeschooling before. Thank you.
Okay po, Doc. Then thank you po for our next question. This is from Miss Filomena Peñaflor. Good day
Yes
po,
po, good
sir.
afternoon.
In generation today, the children nowadays are focused more on internet, computers, and forgetting the values of a good child. How can we discipline them as parent as well as teacher?
Um, on that note po that the students right now are more focused on the use of gadgetry, the use of the internet. Ma'am, and of course the other members of the audience, we have to understand that this is really something that characterizes their generation. Okay? In the same way as our generation will be characterized by certain tendencies also that we may actually have. For example, when I was a college student, as soon as the teacher gives out an assignment, and I hope my teacher will forgive me for this one because I'm letting the tea out on this. I'm spilling the tea on this one rather. As soon as the teacher gives us the assignment, I would play through one and I would raise my hand and say, Ma'am, may I go out? Onto the dying minutes of the session, ha? Again, I would ask for permission to go out. What for? I will not go to the restroom. I would go immediately to the library. If only I have winged feet, I could have flown to the central library of the university. Each one of my hands over here would have their own minds because they know where is that book where I could find the answers to the teacher's questions. And if I found that book already, I have been telling my students about this one. Since the number of copies for that book is highly limited, I'm prompted now to hide that book somewhere else. Come back after at around 6:30 and get the book. Can you blame me? No. It's simply because we don't have that much number of copies of the particular book, unlike now. The students have it at the tip of their fingers. As soon as you actually give the question, they're already thinking at the back of their mind, can I possibly find the answer to this question or questions in Google? Is there a website that could possibly give me all the answers to these ones? And I'm telling you, even within a few minutes, they would be able to give an assignment, turn over an assignment. Okay? So it's not that they have lost a sense of values. I think it's just that as adults and as of course their guides, we're supposed to be there always to be of help to them because the information highway definitely is quite big for them to to understand that there are certain values also that they have to recognize and develop within them. So let's just be patient with our students. It's not that they have lost a sense of values. They still have it po. It's just that we have to be patient in, of course, in reminding them, dealing with them. And one thing's for sure, with our generation po of students, shouting at them will not be, how do you call this one, be functional. It will not work. When you shout at them, it will not work. You have to have, shall we say, a consultative nature. You have to be open of in terms of connecting with them. Because the more that you are able to establish a sense of connection with them, all the more that it would be easier for you to understand them and you, of course, being understood. And of course, the relationship between teacher and student in the context of learning gets to, of course, give us what we expect as the yield or the output. Thank you.
Thank you po, Doc. And for our last question for this
Yes.
afternoon, this is from Miss Katrina Luperio. Doc, what
Good
is the
afternoon po.
difference po of GEC for junior high school, senior high school, and college? Or is this for college only?
Ah, yes po ma'am. What I discussed a while ago po is for tertiary education. That's based on CHED-CMO 20, series of 2013. So these are general education courses. In the senior high school, I know that there are also general education courses, but they also have their specialization courses, whatever is their strand. For example, if they are in the STEM or science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, they do have a certain set of learning areas or courses or subjects to take so as to develop in them the necessary competencies that they when they choose a degree program for college, then they are of course properly equipped in articulating these competencies in college. That's the reason why um, a lot of colleges po are really requiring that the ones entering their programs actually come from those that are aligned with their degree program. So for example, if you are getting into engineering and you did not take STEM, for example, the college or the academic institution may require from you a bridging course or program perhaps, so that you would be better equipped, of course, with the challenges of taking an engineering program, for example. Definitely for elementary education, it's general education po talaga. As of course, there are different subject areas that our students would have to um, uh, that would have to develop their competencies. And one thing there is that of course, in the general education curriculum or in the curriculum of basic education, especially in the elementary level, it's spiral by nature. Or even in high school, K to 10, it's spiral in nature, meaning there would be repetition. But repetition is for mastery. Always remember that. The repetition of the competencies developed in basic education, K to 10, are moving towards mastery so that when they move on to grade 11 and 12, at least they have the necessary skills, required skills already to take on senior high school. Thank you po.
Thank you so much, Doc June, for addressing the questions from our viewers this afternoon. Before we
Thank you
finally
din
end
po.
our session po, Doc, do you have any final reminders or final words for our viewers po?
Yes, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank, of course, Vival, Ma'am Kia, and Ma'am Michelle for guiding me through this streaming. And of course, I'd like to thank each and everyone who's actually watching right now. I think we are not just nationwide; we are global also in a context that people can access this through YouTube. So wherever you are in this part of the world, if you are a fellow teacher, big shout out to you. So again, I strongly encourage you to, of course, be patient with our students. Remember our uh, our vocation for teaching is really for the service of our students, for the service of our nation. That with the hope and prayer that our nation gets to develop and would be back on track with the help of each and every teacher. Maraming salamat po at magandang hapon.
There we have it. In behalf of the Bell Group Incorporated, we would like to thank Doc June Santiago for spending your afternoon with us. Maraming salamat po, Doc. And we hope to see you po again sometime on our other webinars. And of course, to
Thank
all
you
our
also.
Kabibal viewers, thank you so much for your continuous patronage to our daily learning session. Then, of course, due to the generosity of our speaker for this afternoon, Doc June is very willing to share us his slides. So if you wanted to have a copy of his slides, the link is pinned on the comment section and it is also in the description part of our YouTube video. Okay, so once again, if you wanted to have a copy of his video, you can find it on the description part or on the pinned comment. Okay, thank you so much everybody. Then, once again, maraming maraming salamat po at mag-iingat po tayo.